In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade.
That's what we were told. Most Americans never believed Lee Oswald was the lone gunman, for excellent reasons. In fact, there were at least 6 shooters who fired from 8 to 10 shots or more who are identified here. We have, finally, the solution to the greatest murder mystery in history, laid out for the world to see, proof after proof after proof. Photos were faked, the body was changed, x-rays were altered, the home movies were fixed. 15 experts contribute to a 529-page book with 1,037 photos and diagrams in black and white and color.
Hi, this is Gary King. If you'd like JFK, who, how, and why, and would like to support the new JFK show, then go to patriotradiobooks.com. That's patriotradiobooks.com. If you're interested in JFK research, then there's a network just for you. It's called the Firehorse Network. So just say into your phone, Firehorse Network, and it's JFK 24/7. So we're going to be running JFK shows from number 1 all the way to number 151. It's the new JFK show streaming all the time on firehorsenetwork.com.
Okay, welcome to the new JFK Show number 166. We've got Dr. Ralph Cinque, Dr. Jim Fetzer, and myself, Larry Rivera, still ailing from the effects of Hurricane Irma, so he may or may not be able to join us tonight. We'll see. He's still alive, as powerful as that hurricane was. So, all right, we've got a lot to cover. Go ahead, Ralph, and I'll go ahead and hit full screen.
What I want to talk about tonight is a new development, which I think is of historic importance. For about the last 2 years, I know that both of you know that I have been advocating that the garage shooter of Oswald was actually FBI agent James Bookhout, that he was a short man, shorter than Jack Ruby actually, and that he's the one that we see in the films and the photos from the police basement. Now, for the first time today, well, wait a second, I guess it was yesterday, there's a guy whose name is Steve Rowe, and he's supposed to be a JFK researcher from the UK, I believe, and he came up with these 2 new images, purportedly, of James Bookhout. This is the first one. It's from a newspaper, and he didn't identify the newspaper. I found out what it is. It's the Marshall News Messenger. It's a kind of a small it was a Dallas-based paper, like it's from a suburb. And that tall man next to the wall is supposed to be James Bookhout. And they're attending, this was in September 1968, so 5 years after the assassination. And they're attending some type of FBI conference on bank robberies, and they're looking at posters. And so that is supposed to be him.
Doesn't he look too tall, Rolf?
Well, he's much too tall to be.
Yeah, I don't think it's Bookhout.
And we're going to go through the images, and what I'm going to do with you tonight is the same thing that I told my adversaries I was going to do, which is to compare these images to the known images of James Bookhout that we already have, and they are his yearbook photos. So they're of him when he was younger, but still, they're definitely of him. So we have something to work with. But anyway, go to the next photo, though, so I can...
All right, yeah, just 1 second, Ralph, why don't you go ahead and explain about James Bookhout, even though we're familiar, maybe our audience isn't quite there.
All right, okay. Well, the long and short of it is that right around 2 years ago, I started really wondering whether Ruby really was the garage shooter, because there were certain disparities between the shooter. The shooter seemed shorter. He actually seemed a bit fatter. and his hair was longer in back than I could see on Ruby in his mugshots. And also Ruby had a lot of hair growth on the back of his neck between haircuts, and whereas the garage shooter was clean shaven. So I saw all these little things that just made me feel uncomfortable that was Ruby. So what I did, and I think it's a smart thing to do, is I asked myself, well, maybe somebody else had the same idea. So I did an internet search for, Jack Ruby was not the garage shooter of Oswald, to see if anybody else had ever put anything up about it. And sure enough, there was this Russian guy who had made a YouTube video about it. And I went and watched it, and it's rather quite long and it's quite detailed. And I thought he did a very, very good job. And I ended up contacting him in Russia, and today he's a member of our organization, the Oswald Innocent.
Oh, terrific, Ralph! Terrific.
We finally got a Russian. So anyway, that's great. So anyway, that's how it all began. And but of course, I've received a tremendous amount of resistance from people, especially on the other side. And one of the claims they make, and it sort of reminds me of like with the Alkins photo, where they used to say, "Oh, it can't be altered because they sent it out at 1 o'clock." And in this case, their talking point was that it's a known fact that James Bookhout was tall. Now, this is the other image that was included in this set. This guy smoking the pipe is supposed to be James Bookhout. I want to point out, first of all, that he doesn't seem quite as tall in this picture. You've got men behind him that seem a little taller than he is.
Right.
And, if he's over 6 feet, that means this is a room full of giants. So this guy, and not only that, but if you look at his legs, even though you can't see his feet and you're not seeing the lower part of his leg, mentally you can kind of fill them in. And to me, he looks like a man with short legs, and too short of legs to be that tall. So I have doubts about him being all that tall.
Either,
Let me
yeah.
talk about this picture, because I think this is very important to think about. This is supposed to be an image from the assassination. This is the Homicide Bureau of the Dallas Police Department. And behind him, you see several detectives who are Fritz's men. They're wearing the characteristic white Stetson hat that they all wore. And then you've got a cop in uniform next to them. So we're definitely at the Dallas PD. This is this is one of those days during the weekend of the assassination. And supposedly that is Bookhout. Now, the first question that I have about this is how come this picture took 53 years to surface? I mean, if it's one of the DPD photos, who had it, who was hoarding it, who was hiding it, why wasn't it part of the public record until yesterday? So that's a very kind of a troubling thing in itself. But we're going to start comparing details on this picture to the known images of Bookhout, and it's going to be a wild ride. So go to the next image.
All right.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, okay. This is the first thing I want to point out about this particular picture. If you look at this closely, you can see that in the back of his head, he's got hair that seems to be sticking up. It seems to be curling up. It looks a little wild and woolly back there. But in the very front, he's got this, what appears to be just a very, very short, flat, kind of a tuft of hair that is sort of projecting forward like a peninsula. But I'm going to suggest to you that that's a fake piece for several reasons. One is that, to my eyes, it doesn't even look like hair. It almost looks like somebody took a felt pen and just started smearing some black there. That's the first thing. But the second thing is this, is that when you look in the back and you see that he's got more longer hair and it seems to be, unruly and it seems to be sticking up, why would he keep the hair in the very front, which is the most visible, the most exposed, the most, you might say combable? Why would he keep that so short and keep it longer back here? I could see if he did the opposite. I mean, yeah, there's lots of guys who will keep kind of a little bit of a longer tuft in front so that they can comb it, but they don't want to be troubled with having to fuss with their hair, so they keep it real short and back. Okay, that I can understand. But to cut it real short in front where it doesn't even look like hair, it almost looks like a mat, and then to keep it longer and back, I mean, what for? I don't think anybody would do that. So I'm very suspicious that in trying to match the image I'm going to show you of young Bookhout, that they were trying to just basically fill in some hair there. So that's the first thing I would point to as a piece of fakery in this image. Go to the next, please.
Yeah, he appears to be bald in the back.
Yeah,
I noticed that too.
Yeah, I noticed it too. Yeah, he appears to be bald in the back, but he seems to have longer hair back there. Yeah, go to the next one. Okay. Now this is, I put some boundaries in there so I can show you just how wild and woolly this is. But I call that the Bookhout sweep. He seems to have this very, very thick, and it seems to be almost levitating, this hair that just seems to be like a block of hair that's just sweeping back, and it seems to be raised. It seems to have no connection whatsoever to the hair above it, and it seems to be extending beyond the back of his head. To me, it looks very unnatural, and I call it the Bookhout sweep. They say it was quite the rage back in the 60s.
Yeah. Men didn't wear their hair. They didn't let it grow like that. Sort of like the Fraser look.
Yeah, well, not only that, but remember something. If he was Bookhout, that means he was an FBI agent. And all of these FBI agents were very clean-shaven, and they had very closely groomed, cropped hair. They all wore it short, and it seemed like that was the standard for FBI agents. I didn't see any FBI agents with longish hair. So the idea that Bookhout had his hair like that is another thing to doubt about this image. Anyway, go to the next. Go to the next. All right, now this is the first comparison that I have between a known image of James Bookhout and this image, and we're going to use it as a measuring rod. Now, the image on the left is from the yearbook, the 1937 yearbook of Southern Methodist University in Dallas, which is where he went to law school. And this was his law school photo. So the year was 1937. His age was 23 years old. Now, I don't have any doubt that that is a real image of James Bookhout. However, I also think that there were things done to it to alter the image. For example, look at the eyebrows. Those are the eyebrows that I've been referring to as drag queen eyebrows, because nobody, and not a man and no woman, has eyebrows that shape. The eyebrows either just go horizontally across the top, or in some people, they may have a slight arc where it's just but the idea that it would make an S shape, which is what we're seeing there, it's basically an S shape, the letter S, is absolutely impossible. Now, women will do all kinds of things with their eyebrows, but they're doing it by tweezing the eyebrow, and they're painting on stuff. And so that's how they're getting an effect like that. But the idea that this is just a regular guy and he just happened to have eyebrows, that's impossible. So the first thing I would say about this is that if it really is true that this guy on the right is James Bookhout, well, he obviously does not have that S-shaped eyebrow. I mean, to the best of our knowledge, he just has a normal eyebrow that's just going across the top of his head. If it was shaped like what we see on the left, it would certainly stand out. So if they're going to tell us that this is James Bookhout, then they're also acknowledging that this is a fake eyebrow on this Bookhout image on the left. And one final thing about that is that I actually found an article that was written about the CIA and about the image altering that they do, in which they are aware that when you change the eyebrow, it has an immense effect on changing the look of a person, that you can actually produce a lot of variation just by playing with the eyebrow. It gives you a lot of bang for the buck. So I think that's what they did there, and that's the reason we're seeing that eyebrow. But the first thing I want to say about this guy's face on the left that I want you to observe is that he had a very puffy face. He had very full cheeks. And this, I think, was very much a biological tendency. We have an image of him from high school in which he has an even rounder face. So he actually slimmed down a little bit by this point in his life, but he still has a very full face. There's nothing gaunt about his face. He has very full, puffy cheeks. Now, that's the tendency that you have. and some people do, it tends to increase as you get older. It doesn't tend to go away. It tends to increase. Now, the man on the right, to my eyes, has a very slender face. He has a rather gaunt face, and it's nothing at all like the one on the left in terms of the puffiness. You do see the similar shape of the hairline, but I think that's what they were trying to accomplish when they put that extra little tuft there. Notice that on the left, it looks like real hair. You can see strands of hair coming out of the scalp. But on the right here, like I say, it really just looks like somebody took a black felt pen and just sort of touched it up. That's it. They touched it up.
Those are good points, Ralph. Something strikes me as odd about Bookout's right ear. I mean, does that ear look right to you?
Well,
it doesn't.
No, you're absolutely right. And I do get to that. For some reason, the top, the helix, which is the cartilage on the outside on top, it's discolored. It looks white, and I don't really know any natural reason why it would do that.
But ears are as distinctive as fingerprints.
Right, exactly, right.
So they may have wanted to mess it up to make it difficult to compare them.
Well, that may be a part of it too. But what I want you to notice right here is that you can see the tendency to have a very full, puffy face on Bookout here on the left, whereas you see a completely gaunt face on the man on the right. And I do think it was a natural tendency. Go to the next picture, please.
Okay. That's his son.
Okay, put him up. Now, this is the son of James Bookout. His name, he goes by Jim Bookout. And I want you to notice that he, too, has a very full, wide face, and he's very puffy in the area of...
He's also at least 50 pounds overweight.
Yeah, he's overweight, right, that's true. But
he's short.
And yeah, he's quite a bit overweight. But let me tell you, Jim, even if he was, say, less overweight...
you still have those features,
To have a full face.
Right, I wasn't seeking to disagree. Yeah, I was just observing.
Right, okay. Anyway, go to the next image, please.
Yeah, you can tell it's kind of short looking at the flag behind him.
Yeah, right. Look how short. Yeah, because flags aren't that tall. Okay. Now, what I've done here, the purpose of this collage is specifically to compare the ears, and we see that weird white discoloration on the right, which is the image of the disputed figure. And I think that what they were going for is this sort of elf ear that we're seeing on Bookout on this side. Now, keep in mind that I'm not even sure that's real, because they may have monkeyed with that.
Yeah.
Back when they monkeyed with the eyebrows, because there aren't too many people with that sharp of an ear. Most of the time, it's more rounded than that.
Well, see, this enables them to point to those features. If somebody wants to make a comparison, they'll say, well, but look at this. You've overlooked the fact their ears are different when they manufactured it that way.
But internally, the ears seem different, too. You know, you have all ridges and lines and holes there. You have the concha, and there really isn't any duplication. So I consider this a non-confirmation of the ear as well, despite that weird issue. Yes. Okay, all right, go on to the next, please. Go on to the next.
Okay.
You're doing a good job with the images.
Very, very good job. Okay. All right, now what the purpose of this is, and this is a weird thing. This is a really weird thing. This is the nose collage, and I want you to look at the nose on Bookout on the right. He seems to have a very, very short nose, for one thing. And that's about as much of a ski slope nose as I've ever seen, meaning that, you know, it comes down for the bridge and then it kind of scoops up. It's like people used to make fun of Bob Hope for having a nose like that, but his nose was very long. This nose is very short. It's a very short nose, and he's got that. And a lot of times in childhood, little kids have noses like that because they just haven't developed their nose yet all the way to what it's going to be. And they often refer to it as either a pug nose, or they might refer to it as a button nose. So go to the next image, and I have an example of one. No, that's not it. Get rid of that one. Go down to this girl here. There's one there. You'll see here. Yeah, this little girl. I just want to put this up for a moment. Okay. All right. So that's an example. And you, like I say, on little kids, you'll very often see that kind of thing. And then as they get older, the bones develop, and the top of the nose, comes out more, and the cartilage grows, and it tends to sort of change as the person gets older. And another thing I want to point out that's very important, and a lot of people, have never thought about it, but the nose is a part of your body that keeps growing throughout life. The older you get, the bigger your nose gets, and if we all could live to say 200, we would all have enormous noses, because that's what we do, is keep growing throughout life. Now go back to the image that we were looking at of the two noses. Then, so it's 3 images above. No, right above that one. Right. Oh, there it is. It says nose collage. Okay, that's it.
This one here.
Yeah, right there. Okay. Now the thing I would point out about this image is you can see how small the nose is on the right. It's not only small, it's short and it's shallow. Everything about it is little. On the left, Bookhout, in reality, actually, he didn't have such a small nose. It projected out in a very prominent way. And the bridge of his nose is actually very wide and prominent. The only thing about his nose that makes it sort of unusual is that he had very narrow nostrils. He really had, that's what you call a pinched nose. He really had very, very narrow nostrils.
Yes.
But it looks nothing like this. It's almost like a little pig snout on this guy here on the side. Now, did he really have a nose like that? I doubt it, because what happens is, again, even if you had a nose like that as a little kid, as you get older, the nose grows, it develops, it matures, and it no longer looks like that. And I think it's very unlikely a man of that size and that age would have a nose that small and that, stunted. So I have to think that on some basis they were trying to, maybe his, whatever nose he actually had was so in conflict that they had to pare it down, and they thought it wouldn't be noticed, and they wound up with that. But I have to think that is an alternate image too, because I find it very, very doubtful that man would have a nose like that. But regardless, even if I'm wrong about that, it's obviously a very different nose than the one that we're seeing on Bookhout. So again, the nose is another non-confirmation. So let's go to the next image, please.
All right, we wanted this one here.
Let's see. Did we get this one here? Which one was this? No. Go. Excuse me.
The one above the girl?
Yeah. Yeah, that one right there. All right, now the reason I put this on is because I want you to focus on one thing, his glasses. Look at his left eyepiece. What I wrote in my article was, to me, it looks like a swimming goggle. He seems, it's certainly not a normal eyeglass. Now, supposedly, he's wearing just regular clear lens, reading glasses. It's nothing special. And yet, it's got this weird silvery thickness to it. And I have no idea what that is actually supposed to be on that side.
Good catch, Ralph.
All right. But even on the other side, there's a weird opacity right over the lens, such that we don't really get to see his eyes at all. We don't see his left eye. We don't see his right eye. It's all blocked up, and each side is different. And I have never in my life seen anybody present with glasses that look like that. That is absolutely the weirdest set of glasses that I have ever seen. And I cannot believe for 1 second that it is real. So I don't know what they were really trying to do. Maybe his eyes gave away that he wasn't booked out, and they just found that they had to cover them. But why they did it that way and why it resulted in that weird, freaky look, I don't know. But I don't think it's real, and it certainly just raises more doubts about the...
It's like the editing of the Zapruder film. Until you know what actually it would have shown before it was edited, you don't understand why it was edited the way it was.
And let me follow that thought, Jim, that, the thing about this whole photo is that since we have no other version, since we've never seen it before, since we have nothing to compare it to, we don't really have any way of knowing how it's supposed to look.
Right.
And what that means is that since they're introducing it now, 53 years later, it means that they could take full advantage of Photoshop and other software to do whatever the hell they want with
Ralph, you were on InfoWars talking about this.
Okay, good.
So they're going to try to cope with it. You have uncovered something stunning. No one ever thought about it but this Russian guy before.
That's right.
So
he was number one.
They've got these units in the CIA that exist to manufacture new evidence to cope with new research.
Well, they really pulled out all the stops when they came up with this doozy.
Well, Ralph, you hit them from the side. They didn't see you coming.
Okay, let's go. Next image, please. Next image. Okay.
All right. Yeah, he looks like he's got a Coke bottle. So which one?
Yeah, this one. Okay, now we're going to start with the other image that they're providing here of this other supposed image of Bookhout, in which he is at that conference in Dallas concerning bank robberies. Now, it's a very, very fuzzy picture. You know, it's grainy, and if I had submitted it, people would have complained, oh, you know, you submitted such a lousy photo. But they're the ones who are providing it. And actually, I'll tell you something else. The image that they provided, meaning, you know, my adversaries, and they're all dancing the jig because they think that they've got me, you know, by the neck. But the version of this that they presented is even blurrier. I actually found this myself elsewhere on one of those, newspaper search company things. And this is, even as bad as it looks, this is actually better than the one that they provided. But I want to point out a couple of things here. First of all, I want you to notice that his hair looks perfectly natural. There's really nothing about it that looks weird. I mean, whoever he was, I have no doubt that that's what his hair looked like. And what I suspect is that the other guy, whatever his hair looked like, was so different from this that they had to put that other...
Well, he may have even been bald.
Yeah, he may have been completely bald for all we know, right? Okay. Well, anyway, what we can do on this photo is two things. We can compare the ears, and we notice that the ear looks longer on this side, and the lobule especially looks much longer. The lobule refers to the soft, fleshy part of the ears where they put the earrings, and this guy has a longer lobule and a different shaped lobule.
The jaws seem quite different, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, the jaw, well, he doesn't have, you know, that same, you know, puffy.
Bookhout has a defined jaw. This guy is kind of mushy.
Well, I see what you mean, right? Yeah, there's an angle to the jaw, right, that you don't see on the other side. But then the other thing is this, is that this guy's nose is really, really, really weird because it's very, very short, just like we saw in the other image. But on this case, we can actually see, if you look closely, you can see both nostrils. They're kind of hanging out. And
that's an artificial imposition, Ralph. You're right.
Yeah, that has got to be
like the snout of a pig.
Right. It looks like the snout of a pig, exactly.
How ridiculous is that?
It really is absurd what they did with that. But notice, though, in his case that, I mean, his glasses look reasonably normal. And I think that the other guy, who knows, maybe he wasn't wearing glasses at all, but and they were trying to match this. But here's a weird thing about this photo that I really cannot make sense of. Look at the size of the knot of his tie. Have you ever in your life seen a smaller... I mean, it doesn't even look like fabric. Notice how on Bookhout here, even though you're seeing it minimally, that, you know, his tie, it looks like a tie knot.
More like an amulet. Isn't it called an amulet, you know, when you have more of the...
Well, that's what I'm wondering, if this guy was actually wearing one, because in Texas, they have these... amulets that they wear.
Right.
And it's just this tiny little thing that they just kind of put there in place of a tie.
Well, with a couple of strands, you know, like laces.
And I'm wondering if maybe that's what he was wearing, because I can't imagine for a second that he got up that morning And look how narrow the tie is.
Yeah.
The envelope just has a couple of strings that
Right.
come from it. And that's
Right.
probably what that was. And then they just tried to beef it up into a tie, but there's just no way that that could have been the condition of his tie, that he woke up that morning and he actually made his tie that look like that. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
See, Ralph, you contribute so much because your background is so different than most of us. By your history as a chiropractor and dealing with people, their bodies or clothing, you just make sensational insights.
Let's go to the next image, please.
All right, before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. This is New JFK Show number 166. We've got Dr. Ralph Cinque, our special guest. We'll be right back.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade.
That's what we were told. Most Americans never believed Lee Oswald was the lone gunman, for excellent reasons. In fact, there were at least 6 shooters who fired from 8 to 10 shots or more who are identified here. We have, finally, the solution to the greatest murder mystery in history, laid out for the world to see, proof after proof after proof. Photos were faked, the body was changed, x-rays were altered, the home movies were fixed. 15 experts contribute to a 529-page book with 1,037 photos and diagrams in black and white and color.
Hi, this is Gary King. If you'd like JFK, who, how, and why, and would like to support the new JFK show, then go to patriotradiobooks.com. That's patriotradiobooks.com.
All right, welcome back to New JFK Show number 166. We're going to let Dr. Ralph Cinque carry on, so we'll go ahead to the next image.
All right, on this one, what I simply did was I came in closer, and obviously it does increase the distortion on the right side, but I wanted to show you again that, and if you look very closely, you will see it, that the left side of his nose, meaning his left nostril, is actually hanging off his face. It's just sort of like in midair, almost like it got cut, and now it's just sort of hanging by a thread from the rest of the nose. In other words, from this angle, as we're looking at him, we shouldn't even be seeing it like that. I mean, it's just turned too much.
It doesn't look like a real face.
No, it really doesn't. Now, there's another thing that I'm going to point to here. I remember I told you a moment ago that this is actually a better image than the one that my opponents are brandishing. This is clearer, it has less distortion, fewer artifacts. But if you look over the nose, right in the middle of the nose, you see that there's some black there, and it looks like, I mean, I can't imagine what it's supposed to be other than shadow. But there really isn't anything that could have cast shadow on his nose. Now, his nose is, the nose projects from the face, and the nose can easily cast shadow, say, against a wall. If you've got light on this side and you're next to the wall, yeah, your nose can sort of stick out and create a shadow that can be seen on the wall. But I can't imagine what in his vicinity could have been casting any black on his nose. But even though I have it cropped here, what I'll tell you is you can see that the black continues to the right, and it actually continues quite a ways, and it's almost like there's a bar of blackness there that to me looks like an artifact that they might have put it into, I don't know, blacken something out, or to create some type of distracting effect. I'm not really sure what they did, but it doesn't look natural, it doesn't look photographic, and it's just a weird thing. So even that little bit of blackness over his nose, is something that stands out to me. Now we're going to be looking once more at that other weird image, but I want you to notice here that on this guy, it seems like just barely we're supposed to be seeing his eye within the glass. If you look below the frame, it looks kind of black. It doesn't really have the form of an eye, but yeah, right in there. But at least it's giving you the idea that there's something there. But we're not actually seeing it as
This face is all mashed up, Ralph. It's like they put it together out of clay or something. It does not look real.
No, it really doesn't. All right, let's go to the next image.
Okay.
Let's go to the
This one here. Okay.
All right, now I put these two images together this time because, again, to my eye, the guy on the left seems taller than the guy on the right.
Yeah, I agree.
Like I said, there's a wall next to him. He reaches the top of the wall. The wall had to be at least 6 feet tall, may have been even taller. So, yeah, that guy, whoever he was, really is tall. But
he's also heavier. The guy on the right is much thinner, Ralph. The guy on the left has a much more substantial body and physique. The guy on the right is very slender.
Very, very slender. And actually, you know, you're making a good point, Jim, is that the guy on the left, you know, his face is not as gaunt as the guy on the right. The guy on the right really seems to have a gaunt face. He just seems to have no fat in his face at all. I mean, this guy on the left, to my eyes, I mean, if you told me, you know, he liked to drink a little, I wouldn't argue with you because, you know, he looks a little bit like, yeah, he might drink a little bit because he's got that kind of full flush in the face and it looks a little puffy like he might down one now and then. Whereas the guy on the right looks like, you know, he might be like a runner because he just looks so
major difference in their body mass. Yes.
Yeah. But again, but my whole impression of this guy on the right is that he was not at all that tall. His legs are short, and you've got this guy behind him who is taller than he is. And I want to point something out that I think is important. You know, I know of several images of JFK and Johnson in which it's a picture of JFK and Johnson is sort of standing subserviently behind him. And therefore, he's an extra foot away from the camera, you might say, than Kennedy is. And Kennedy, we know his height. He was 6 foot and 1/2 inch. He was just he was a fraction of an inch over 6 feet. Now, Johnson, I think, was a very tall guy. I think he was about
6'4".
6'4". Now, that's a big difference. That's a 3.5 inch difference. But the point I'm making is that when you had a situation where Kennedy was in front and Johnson was a few feet behind, that in the image, they look like they're the same height. Johnson looks like he's no taller than Kennedy. They really look the same height. And the reason why is simply because Kennedy is closer to the camera, and because he's closer, he's larger. The farther an object is from the camera, the smaller they appear in the picture. So everything about Johnson was a little bit smaller, including his height. And so in this case here, we've got this cop who's behind him. He seems to be a little bit taller, but again, because he's a little further from the camera, he may have even been more taller than that over this guy in front. The man back behind him seems taller, and the same is true of the man in the very top of the picture in the corner. So
yeah, this guy here is 7 feet tall, it looks like.
Well,
the guy on the right might be Will Fritz, by the way.
Oh my gosh, Jim!
Jim,
if you're right, Will Fritz, I know his height. He was only 5'7". He was 1 inch taller than I am. He was a short guy. There's an image of him that was taken by the Dallas Times-Herald photographer Robert Allen, and it's on Robin Unger's website, in which you see him coming down the steps of the depository, and ahead of him is one of his detectives, Detective Boyd, and that guy was very tall. I mean, I know how tall he was. He was 6'2". And you see Fritz there. And compared to Boyd, he looks like a midget. And yes, and I actually found out that he was just 5'7". He was a short man. So if you're right, and I see what you mean, and I'm going to pursue it, Jim, because those glasses look kind of distinct.
I think it's Will Fritz.
Oh my gosh, if that's Will Fritz, then this guy is definitely not as, how can he possibly be as tall as this guy? This guy is a giant. So, Jim, that is gold. I am going to definitely look that up. Like I say, it's just, but anyway, what I wanted to get at also, so that we have the difference in the height between them. We have the difference in this fullness of the face where This guy has a much fuller face. And Jim, you made a good point. It's like the whole manifestation of the neck and the jaw, everything seems to be mushy. That's it, doesn't it? Because there's no distinct lines. You're not really getting a real clean sense of jaw. And it's because I think he had loose skin under his neck and he just had enough puffiness there that it all just seems to be kind of amorphous, and you don't get a real clear sense of geometry. That's the word. But on this guy, oh my gosh, if we were seeing him at a true profile, I'm sure that we would get a very clear sense of just having very clean lines to everything, because he just seemed to be so really thin and gone. Look how thin his neck looks compared to this guy. I mean, he really looks like he's, like I say, like maybe he spent all his free time running. Now, here's another comparison that I want you to make. Look at his tie on the right. Now, he had a thin tie on, but it looks human. I mean, it looks physical. It looks like it's possible that it's real. I mean, he's got a knot there on the top, and it's narrow on the top, and then it gets a little wider as it comes down. But hey, it's doable. I could buy it. It looks. But now compare it to this guy on this side. Holy cow! How could that possibly be real?
That's the thinnest tie I've ever seen.
I've ever seen in my entire life. And the thing is this, I cannot think of any photographic reason why it would just say, if somebody were to claim, well, it must have been distorted. Well, how? I mean, you can't just say that a tiny little piece of a photograph got distorted. I mean, if a photograph is distorted, the whole photograph is distorted, and it's all distorted to the same extent, to the same degree. I mean, you can't just isolate and say, yeah, that just got weirded out somehow. So anyway, like I said, that's another thing that I think just gives away just how artificial, that look is. And again, if we compare the glasses, well, at least on this guy on the left, I mean, yeah, they look like glasses. I mean, they're clear lens glasses. There's nothing artificial looking about it. We don't really see the eye, and I'm not sure that they made sure that we couldn't, but at least we get a sense that there's an eye there. I mean, we do have a sense that we're looking through a clear lens and seeing something on the other side, even though it just looks like kind of like a bar. But on this other guy, notice that we don't get the slightest hint of what his eyes look like. Now, you realize that eyes, are the window of the soul, but the look of an eye is a very distinctive thing in a person. And I'm wondering if this guy had eyes that just really screamed that they weren't, Bookhout, because it seems like they went to a lot of effort here to make sure that we didn't see his eyes.
I think it's pretty clear neither of these is Bookhout.
Oh, right. Yeah, neither one of the. But what I'm really getting to think, Jim, is that not only are neither one of these Bookhout, but neither of them is the same man. So
yeah, no, I agree. They aren't the same. They are not the same man, Ralph. You're completely correct.
We're talking about.
These are different guys, and neither of them is Bookhout.
And neither one of them is Bookhout. And Jim, I tell you, we've got enough of look of that ear on this man there on the right, and when I look at the shape of the face, I'm getting the same impression that you got, which is that is Will Fritz. And again, if that is Will,
oh, it is, yeah. The angle that he wore his hat, Ralph. The angle that Will Fritz wore his hat.
He wore it up like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because if you compare the angle on his hat to the man, look how flat and horizontal the hat is on the man behind him. I mean, he's wearing it,
Sure.
Very differently, but yeah, you can see that that hat is.
There's something about these hats too, Ralph. I'm convinced those involved in the assassination were wearing these hats.
Okay, right. Another interesting thing to me that I'm curious enough about to pursue is the idea of him smoking a pipe. Now, I don't know what percentage of men smoke pipes, but I can't imagine it's that high. I mean, if I was going to guess, I'd say maybe less than 10%. I mean, certainly today. I mean, today they tell us that the totality of the smoking population is only 20%. So the pipe smokers have got to be well less than 10. But
Sure.
a lot more men smoked back in 1963. I mean, this is
Sure.
the war on smoking and all that. And you do see a lot of men smoking in JFK assassination images, but still, it was mostly cigarettes.
Sure.
I mean, so the idea that James Bookhout was in this small population of pipe smokers is something that I think could possibly be confirmed, and I'm going to look into it.
Yeah.
But that's another thing.
Bookhout does appear to have been a pipe smoker. I wouldn't be surprised, but so they got a guy with a pipe. But these guys are not Bookhout. You've made the case quite thoroughly and convincingly.
Let me see if is there another image?
I think there's one more.
Yeah, most people smoking pipes today aren't putting tobacco in it.
I get you. I read you. Okay. All right. Anyway, listen. I kind of put this up for laughs. Come on, let's all enjoy a good laugh. Okay. This is what I call the father and son photo. Now, you guys know how they have these competitions where mothers and daughters. It's what they call a mother and daughter look-alike competition. And the idea is that they look alike in their figure, and they also look alike in their face and hair. They do everything to make themselves look alike, almost like twins, even though they're mother and daughter. Well, I've never heard of them doing it for fathers and sons. But if they did, and these two entered, they would come in dead last. I mean, at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, can you imagine these two as father and son? I mean, it's just ridiculous. The idea that
I agree completely. No resemblance whatsoever. None.
Guy.
No resemblance whatsoever.
And the idea that they would be father and son is really, really
ludicrous.
Now, listen, we have a few minutes left. Let me ask you something. Can I quickly send you a couple more images, Gary, or is it just too?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll get them.
Do that real fast because I have a couple things that I think that will add a little bit of a flourish to this. Excuse me.
All right, can you explain to me where these new pictures of Bookhout came from again?
All right. Okay. Well, I was told today that that these images came from a British researcher named Steve Rowe, and that he passed them on to a researcher by the name of Dennis Morissette. Do you know of him, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. You realize he's not on our side. Okay. Absolutely not. He's been against it so long, and then from there the images went to Robin Unger. And then Robin Unger sent them around to B. Pete and to...
Well, we know Robin Unger. We know Robin Unger very well.
Yes, right.
He's the guy with the biggest fingers and the biggest holes in the dike.
But again, I mean, to me, the weird thing is this: again that photo. I mean, what I would demand to know is the provenance of that photo, because the idea that 53 years went by and an image like that never surfaced before.
Ralph, this is an intel chain. That's what's going on here. And you shook them up when you went on. You weren't supposed to be that good, Rolf. They were hoping that they could somehow trivialize or ridicule you, and you came off terrific, strong, knowledgeable, competent, making points no one ever made before. You got them completely off guard, off balance, and they're trying to compensate.
Gary, check your email. I sent you that.
We got it.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah. Let me just
okay, I'll tell you. Yeah,
Larry and I will never be on InfoWars.
Wow, I am so disappointed about that, and I'm not gonna quit badgering Jerry Corsai about it either. Let me tell you. All right, let me tell you the reason why I sent you this image is because if you look closely, you really
look at the nose, the mouth, even the eyes. You get a similar shape of skull.
The eyes,
different hair.
But when you look at the shape, not only the shape of the eyes, but the look of the eyes, the way the eyes are.
You'd have to put 50 pounds on the guy on the left or 75, right. but
right.
they could definitely be related.
Oh my gosh! But you see this. the eyes tell so much. And when you look at those eyes, you do see a compatibility. You do see not only a similarity in shape, but just a very similarity in gaze.
Well, take the eyes, nose, mouth. Eyes, nose, mouth. And look, the eyebrows on the son are probably what the real eyebrows look like on Bookhout.
Well, yeah, actually, I'm sure. You know, he didn't have drag queen eyebrows. But what I noticed, Jim, is that in many of the images, they find a way to block out the eyes. They just don't want you to see the eyes because they know that the eyes tell too much. And if it's a different person that they're trying to sell as Bookhout or someone else, they know the eyes will give it away. So they go ahead and they blacken out the eyes. You know, since that worked so fast, I'm gonna go ahead and send you one more.
Okay.
That'll demonstrate that. It's very good. So anyway, like I say, I find it actually offensive that they would, after 53 years, proffer an image like that without even explaining.
Ralph, no one ever came up with this before. You hit him absolutely by the side of the head with a bat.
Well,
wet mouth.
You hit him like the side of the head with a bat.
You know, these people,
You shook him up, Ralph.
they act like that I wouldn't notice the fact that the picture was missing until
Ralph, you're not supposed to notice anything. They're supposed to be able to con you, but you're too good to be played. I mean, they ought to know that by now.
Yeah, go ahead and shoot it, Timmy.
Okay, hold on a second.
Yes. So, do you believe that they rehearsed the transfer of Oswald several times and put all the pieces together to make it look like it was Jack Ruby?
Let me tell you something. I'm glad you brought that up because I want you guys to be aware of something. That there is a new researcher, a female. Her name is Amy Joyce, and she has done some magnificent work. She has found some fabulous documents, and I think she's very close to joining the OIC, and when she does, I want her to connect with you guys. She's
let's get her on the show.
Absolutely, I think it'd be fantastic. Now she's already. Don't say his name. Don't say his name because I'm not keeping it secret.
Don't say the name, right?
But she's already connected with the guy that I call the Wizard. You know who I'm talking about, okay? And we're having some very good exchanges. You know, the three of us. So. All right, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, still waiting.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't gotten it yet. She's coming in any second. So, but anyway, do you believe that that's what they did? Rehearsed it?
Well, I know Amy believes it, and I think it's very possible. I think it's very possible. One of the things that Amy has done is found a lot of discrepancies between the Beers photo and the Jackson photo. Now, those photos are supposed to be separated by only 0.6 seconds in time. How much change can take place in 0.6 seconds? But she's finding enormous changes. And
it could be part of what they think is her genius by giving you photographs that are so out of sync because they were taken on different occasions that you can't reconcile them and you go crazy attempting to do it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. This is the guy that I call the Wizard made this photo, but this is an image. You see, what happened was this. James Bookhout said in his testimony that he spent the entire time of the jail transfer up in Fritz's office doing nothing. When I say doing nothing, what I mean is that he gave no reason why he stayed up there.
Why would anyone do that? Why would anyone be up in Fritz's office doing nothing when they're transferring Lee Oswald?
Right, the whole world wanted to see this, and yet because of the threats that were coming in on Oswald, and yet somehow, even though he had nothing to do, and he made no excuses for having to do anything, he claimed that he spent the whole time up there. But then, when he got word that Oswald was shot, he claimed that he went down to the jail office, saw Oswald lying on the floor, and waited until the ambulance drivers came in, put Oswald on the stretcher, and then when they wheeled him back out to the garage, he claimed to follow the stretcher, and he said he was right behind the stretcher as they wheeled out to the garage. Okay, when the wizard dwelled on that, it occurred to him, well, then I should look at images of the stretcher being wheeled into the garage and see if I can find an image of Bookhout. And sure enough, he did. And what this is, it's an image, it's the face of a man who is in the garage behind the stretcher. He's a short man, the shortest man there, and he's looking down, and he's not focusing on Oswald, and he's and this is the face, and they actually, and so what the wizard did was he put the face over this face, which is what I believe to be the face of James Bookhout. Now we have just enough time that I can send you one more image, and I'm going to, but okay. In any case, all right. Now the line was drawn by the wizard, and basically he was making a comparison that was meant to try to. He figured out the height of this elevator device, and on that basis, he estimated that the man that we're seeing here in the center is about 5'6". But that's not what I put it up for. That's not what I want to talk about. What I want you to notice about this picture is that even though that man is looking right at us, and even though we can look at Detective Boyd on the left, and we can see his eyes plainly, right? We can see. Yes. And even on this guy Hill on our right, who's looking very sort of worrisome at the photographer, like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be taking this picture. He doesn't look happy about what's going on. And even though he's wearing glasses, we can see his eyes through the glasses. But on this figure of the shooter, even though he's looking right at us, and even though his face is in the light, that his eyes just look like slits. We're not seeing his eyes. There's a categorical difference between his eyes and their eyes. And there's no reason for it. I mean, his eyes should appear smaller because of the distance. He's a little...
Talking here? Right here you talking about?
Oh, right, that's right.
Yeah.
Why are we just seeing slits there?
Why aren't we seeing eyes?
Why are we seeing eyes? And the reason I'm telling you is that, you see, the eyes tell so much, not only because of the shape and the depth and whatnot, but just because everybody's got a very distinctive gaze of their own. And I think it's very possible that, and certainly Jack Ruby did, and I think you probably screamed that this guy, was not Jack Ruby. So what happened, in my opinion, is this, is that they had the melee in the garage in which all these police and detectives were struggling with the shooter, in which they were really just covering him up. Now, here for an example, and this is something that Amy Joyce just found. There was a detective by the name of Watkins who wrote a report, and he actually wrote in the report that the detectives covered up the shooter and then took him into the garage. They covered him up.
Yes.
What a confession.
That's not how he ought to have described it.
Yeah,
They should have said they apprehended him aggressively.
Right. Why did you say covered
but
him
he
up?
knew in his mind what they were supposed to do was cover him up. So that's what he wrote. They covered him up.
Seen this, but the wizard just the other day made a new slow motion guitar where you can see Detective Miller coming up with something in his hand.
A black sack.
Placing it over the head of the shooter. And
a black bag, like a sack.
And isn't that ridiculous? Why would you be doing that at all unless you wanted to conceal their identity? There's no other reason.
Right, obviously. So anyway, once they did that, they had him covered. They took him into the jail office. And at that point, what I believe they did was they turned him over to the other three detectives, Boyd, Sims, and Hill.
That you photographed with there.
Now, you got to look at this. They were there. And they took possession of him. They took him up to the third floor. Somehow that photo got taken.
Have a cup of coffee and a donut.
And then, I believe very shortly after that, they released him, and he went back He changed his clothes, went back to his identity as James Bookhout.
He didn't climb in the ambulance with Lee, did he?
No, he did not do that.
Yeah, okay.
And here's another thing. James Bookhout attended every interrogation of Lee Harvey Oswald. He attended the midnight press conference. He attended the lineups. He
had a special assignment.
Shadow. He was like Oswald's shadow. He spent more time with Oswald than anybody else by far. And yet,
this is the guy he's going to shoot. And
yet, Oswald is shot, and his life is hanging in the balance. And Bookhout wasn't interested in going to the hospital to see what the outcome and find out.
No, he wouldn't draw attention to himself after the shooting.
Too many people from the garage.
He's got to disappear.
He had to disappear. Hey, listen, not only did he disappear, he went on a 6-month leave of absence.
Right. What could be better? Get out of town.
Get out of town. He just absolutely...
Head for the Caribbean. Try St. Thomas. It ain't there anymore, but, you know.
Well, if there's one human being, it's Jim Lavelle that knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and he's a big phony fraud, I'll tell you right now.
Phony fraud. The fact is, and I'm not trying to be mean here, but he's pretty old now, and his mind is getting pretty scrambled. That
right.
At this point in time, he may not know up from down about
right.
He may have convinced himself.
And when you're trying to live a lie, you know, it takes a toll. It takes a toll.
I saw him give a demonstration right there in the garage with a reporter, in which he actually said that they led Oswald out the double doors, the main double doors to the jail office. You know, there's the main double doors, and then to the side, there's just a single door that's sort of in the corner. And in fact, they all came out that side door. That's the door they all came out of. Fritz came out of it, and then the trio of Oswald.
He's mixing up the rehearsal with the real deal.
Maybe that, but with a very straight face, he says, "Yeah, we came marching out these doors, and then we walked here, and then Ruby came out and shot him." He forgot that they came out the side door. So anyway, like I say, kind of be gone.
Ralph, this has been a delight. You've been absolutely perfect, a wonderful guest.
Thank you.
We've really enjoyed this, Ralph.
You guys got to get Amy Joyce on the show.
We'll do it.
We'll definitely do it.
All right, Ralph.
Thanks a lot, man. Good night.
Good man. Great performance.
Thank you.
You asked for the best in JFK, and you got the best in JFK. This is number 166. We'll see you next week.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade.
That's what we were told. Most Americans never believed Lee Oswald was the lone gunman, for excellent reasons. In fact, there were at least 6 shooters who fired from 8 to 10 shots or more who are identified here. We have, finally, the solution to the greatest murder mystery in history, laid out for the world to see, proof after proof after proof. Photos were faked, the body was changed, x-rays were altered, the home movies were fixed. 15 experts contribute to a 529-page book with 1,037 photos and diagrams in black and white and color.
Hi, this is Gary King. If you'd like JFK, who, how, and why, and would like to support the new JFK show, then go to PatriotRadioBooks.com. That's PatriotRadioBooks.com.